Everything you've been taught about political systems is a lie. That democracy won't guarantee your freedom. That socialism won't save the poor. That capitalism, communism, every perfect system humanity has dreamed about over the years is doomed to fail. We put our faith in these ideologies like they're religions, believing democracy will bring liberty, socialism will bring justice, and strong states will bring order. But history tells a different story. Every system cracks, rots, and collapses. Democracy thrives in some nations and dies in others. Socialism sounds inspiring on paper, but implodes in practice. And capitalism? Push it far enough, and it creates such obscene inequality that society eventually tears itself apart. The hard truth is that every system, whether it's democracy, socialism, or communism, eventually fails. Not because the idea is bad, but because the world is messy. People are flawed, and no system survives reality without breaking apart or adapting. In this video, we'll explore why the debate about the perfect system is a waste of time, why the perfect system doesn't exist, and what should we focus on instead of chasing utopian dreams.
Do you ever wonder where the allure of all proposed political ideologies comes from? Humans are wired to avoid uncertainty. Humans crave order. Chaos makes most of us anxious. We long for a world where there's fairness, equality, and prosperity. Whether it's the promise of a classless society under communism, the fairness of democracy where everyone gets a voice, or the perceived securities of state-led economies that shouldn't leave anyone behind, these ideas tap into something deep within us. The hope that a system can fix what's wrong with the world. It's the same reason humans follow routines, gravitate toward religion or ideologies, and crave strong leaders in times of crisis. We dream of a utopia where there's no corruption, no suffering, no injustice. And on paper, these systems look great, but as we'll see in this video, reality doesn't work like a spreadsheet. It's messy, unpredictable, and driven by human nature, something no system can fully predict or control. All ideologies, including democracy, capitalism, socialism, or communism, cater to our deepest desires, to belong, to be treated fairly, and to build a better future. This is why when we see a system working somewhere else, whether it's the American dream, the Nordic model, or the Singaporean miracle, we rush to adopt it, hoping it will work for us too. And this leads to the most seductive illusion of them all. If it worked for them, it'll work for us. But here's the catch. Systems are not plug and play. What works in one place for one group of people at one moment in time may fail completely in a different environment. Systems don't exist in a vacuum. They're embedded in history, culture, geography, and human psychology. The bigger a system grows, the messier it becomes. A village council might work perfectly when 100 people are involved, but can fail miserably if you try to scale that same system and apply it in a nation of 100 million. Layers of bureaucracy pile up, special interests jockey for influence, and competing agendas pull in every direction. And this is not an accident, it's human nature. If there's one thing all systems have in common, is the fact that power corrupts, always and everywhere. All ideologies start with the goal of fairness, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The more a system tries to enforce its version of fairness, the more new forms of unfairness it creates, often by becoming more oppressive in the name of justice. Take communism, for example. It aimed to eliminate class, but often ended up replacing capitalists with powerful party officials. Capitalism promises opportunity for everyone, yet over time it tends to concentrate wealth in the hands of a few. Democracy promises freedom, but can easily slide into gridlock, populism, or even tyranny by the majority. Think of a political system like a garden. No matter how good the soil, weeds will always grow. In any system, greed and self-interest find a way in. That's why even the most idealistic movements, whether socialist, communist, capitalist, or democratic, inevitably create a small group that rises above the rest, benefiting at the expense of the masses. These might be bureaucrats, corporate elites, or autocrats. All these groups represent different ideologies and gain power in different paths, but in their essence are very similar to each other. This always happens when we try to impose order on something inherently disordered, like human nature. Let's talk about the Asian tigers, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong, and add Japan to this story because Japan's post-war economic miracle was the blueprint that inspired them all. Many people in the West keep assuming that these countries became successful because they copied democracy and free market capitalism. But if we look closer, it's evident that something is different. In Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and to some extent Singapore, there's a shared cultural backbone, Confucian values, respect for hierarchy, family, loyalty, discipline, and a focus on education. In the West, democracy is individual rights, the freedom to challenge authority, speak one's mind, and pursue one's own interests. But in East Asia, the collective often comes before the individual. Look at Japan after World War II. The US helped write Japan's new constitution and introduce democracy, but the Japanese interpreted it through their own cultural lens. Consensus, not confrontation, ruled politics. In Japan, the government played a leading role in the economy, directing resources toward industries like cars, electronics, and steel. This wasn't free market capitalism, it was guided capitalism, where the state carefully planned and supported key sectors to drive growth. In South Korea, under Park Chung-hee, the government told business leaders exactly where to invest and helped build powerful family-run companies like Samsung and Hyundai. These businesses grew not from open competition, but through strong government backing. In Singapore, the government owned over 80% of the land and controlled housing, healthcare, and key industries. While embracing capitalism, the state maintained tight control over much of the economy, shaping development closely. In Taiwan, land reform was a turning point. The government redistributed land from wealthy landlords to farmers, creating a stable and productive rural class. This wasn't a Western-style free market, it was a carefully planned foundation for growth. The key difference is that Western capitalism said, let the market decide, while the Asian model said, let's engineer the market. In the West, participation is often defined as voting. But in the Asian tigers in Japan, participation was more about national purpose. One of the reasons why these countries and their companies were able to grow so much and so fast is because workers identified with their companies and lifetime employment was more of an honor than just a simple perk. Or in other words, these countries adopted Western values to create prosperity, but they built on it, combining Western ideology with local values and not forgetting about their people, their culture, and their identity. For much of the 20th century, China was a textbook example of hardline socialism. Under Mao Zedong, the Communist Party collectivized all land in China, private businesses were abolished, and the state dictated production in all areas. The results were bleak, and that's putting it lightly. The Great Leap Forward, an attempt to industrialize overnight, led to famine and the deaths of tens of millions, while the Cultural Revolution tore apart the social fabric. And by the 1970s, China was impoverished, backward, and isolated. Then came Deng Xiaoping, who was not so interested in sticking to communist orthodoxy. His most famous line was, "It doesn't matter if the cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice." And it was exactly this mindset that helped build the system that lifted over 800 million people out of poverty in the last 40 years, a feat unmatched by any other system in human history. Deng launched a radical shift in 1978 and named it Reform and Opening Up. Farmers were allowed to lease land and sell surplus crops. Private businesses were legalized. Foreign companies were invited into special economic zones. And places like Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Xiamen, and Hainan went from fishing villages to megacities in just a few decades. The state retained control over strategic sectors like banking, energy, and telecom, but allowed market competition in consumer goods, tech, and manufacturing. It's a system that confuses Western analysts. Is it communist? Is it capitalist? The answer is, it's China's system. It doesn't fit neatly into any box, and that is part of the reason why it has been so successful. China didn't just blindly copy the West or the Soviet Union. Instead, it took parts of both and blended them into a system that reflects its history, culture, values, and political realities, creating a hybrid system with capitalist incentives that drove growth, but with socialist oversight, via a one-party system with tight political control. Political freedom was severely limited, but economic freedom exploded, a combination that many believed was impossible until that point. After decolonization, many African nations rushed to adopt democracy. Constitutions were drafted, elections were held, and leaders were elected. But instead of prosperity, many countries fell into chaos, coups, civil wars, and widespread corruption. Why? Because democracy was introduced without understanding local customs, tribal groups, or the real economic struggles people faced.
It was like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And by now, it's safe to say that it has failed miserably. Here are just a few of many examples. After gaining independence from Britain in 1960, Nigeria inherited a parliamentary system that mimicked the UK. But Nigeria is a country of over 250 ethnic groups, each with different languages, cultures, and power structures. Democracy assumed a level playing field and a common national identity that didn't exist. This version of democracy got tangled up in rivalries between regions, which made it hard for democratic institutions to function properly. Liberia, modeled after the US Constitution, descended into decades of civil war. The Democratic Republic of Congo was handed a Western-style state and fractured under the weight of corruption and violence. Even South Africa, with its relatively successful democracy, struggles with deep inequality, corruption scandals, and a fragile social situation, even today. In Libya, Gaddafi's fall left a power vacuum, and Western-style democracy collapsed into warlordism. In Iraq, the US invasion toppled Saddam Hussein, but elections quickly turned into sectarian power struggles between Shiites, Sunnis, and Kurds. In Afghanistan, 20 years of trying to build a democracy from scratch ended with the Taliban back in power. Why? Because democracy assumes a basic level of trust, institutional capacity, and a shared sense of nationhood. In many of the previously mentioned societies, power flows through tribal structures, family ties, and religious networks, not the ballot box. And elections quickly turn into tools for sectarian division and resource capture, not vehicles for shared governance.
Installing a foreign political system is like transplanting a tree into foreign soil. It might not take root. Systems are living, breathing structures that must be built with the hands of the people who live in them. And copying another country's model, no matter how successful, without adapting it to your own realities, is a certain recipe for disaster. What works for Sweden, a small, highly educated, and largely equal society, won't work for Somalia, a country shaped by clan-based traditions, low literacy rates, and ongoing conflict. Similarly, the model that helped South Korea transform its economy can't simply be copied and expected to succeed in Haiti, where the challenges are very different. Systems must be organic and grown from the ground up. They need buy-in from the people. They need to reflect local values, beliefs, problems, and histories. Without that, no system, whether that's democracy, socialism, or communism, will ever thrive. Yet time and time again, we've seen exactly that mistake. Communist revolutions have tried to replicate Marx's vision, Western democracies have tried to export their models, bureaucrats have attempted to transplant proven solutions from abroad, ignoring local cultures and realities. But it never works out the way they expect, because when you copy-paste a system, you're ignoring the history, culture, and values of the people. For example, a parliamentary democracy assumes people are used to voting, debating, and accepting the rule of law. But in places where political power has always flowed through tribal elders, clan leaders, or strongmen, elections can feel alienating.
So what makes a system last? It's not ideology, it's participation. Systems succeed when they include everyone, when people have a voice, when they feel ownership, and when there's space for dialogue and feedback. Top-down systems, no matter how clever, eventually break when they ignore the voices from below. The best systems evolve, adapt, or change based on real-world feedback. The moment a system stops listening to its people is the moment it starts to rot from the inside. Democracy without engagement becomes an empty ritual, ballots cast into a void, decisions made by a disconnected elite. The same goes for socialist systems. Socialism, in theory, is about collective ownership and shared decision-making. But if the people aren't truly involved, if it's just party officials in smoky rooms deciding everything, then it turns into bureaucratic authoritarianism. When there is no active participation, governments pass laws that have nothing to do with the people's real concerns, leaders make decisions for short-term political gain, and the people lose faith, stop participating, and the system begins to decay. This is what makes Scandinavian democracies strong. They aren't perfect, but they have trust, dialogue, and mechanisms for citizens to shape policies. This is also why the Asian tigers succeeded. They built systems that, while not fully democratic, had ways for citizens to participate in the national project, through a shared vision, goals, economic buy-in, and social mobility. A system that can't adapt is like a rigid dam holding back a river. Sooner or later, the pressure will build, and it will burst. But a system that listens, adjusts, and evolves is like a river flowing around obstacles. It bends without breaking. In other words, no system can be given to the people. It must be theirs. So let's bring it all together. We've seen how democracy, socialism, capitalism, and authoritarianism each have their own strengths, their own promises, and their own fatal flaws. We've seen how the Asian tigers and China succeeded not by copy-pasting someone else's successful system, but by adapting, listening, and building systems that fit their environments. We've seen how the failures of democracy in Africa and the post-Soviet collapse weren't just about bad leaders or bad luck. They were the product of importing systems without roots. Let's face it, human nature is messy. Humans are driven by greed, fear, hope, and self-interest. No system can magically erase these traits. That's why every system, whether it promises equality, freedom, or order, ends up struggling with the same problems: corruption, inequality, power imbalances, resistance to change. The road to utopia is paved with good intentions, but it often leads to disaster, because it ignores the messy, unpredictable, contradictory nature of human beings. It's not about which ism you follow: capitalism, socialism, democracy, or something else. It's about what works for your people in your context at that particular moment in time. The world is changing fast, and a system that can't adapt to new challenges will eventually break. That's why the future doesn't belong to those who search for the perfect ideology. It belongs to those who build resilient, flexible, and responsive systems that create conditions where people and time can evolve and move forward together.